Cool. I'm here with Shannon from Z Health. I just wanted to have a quick conversation because your booth is right across from ours, and you gravitated towards us because of something. So tell us
Oh,
what you're doing and how we could potentially fit in.
so uh, so our company is an education company, and so we're always looking at things from a neurologic standpoint, right? So I was looking across and saw the booth, and I'm like, okay, deep muscle, okay, what's that about? But then with a little talk from you guys about how you're working on creating some compression, but some actual stimulation so that people have to orient against gravity differently. And so, since posture is neurologically governed, what you have to think about with posture is, well, what's going to give the right input to the nervous system? So, to create length, and you need that pressure down, right, to do axial extension. So, this is such a great way to try to find the right kind of input for a person. So the reason that a person might do better in with that kind of compression is because that's the right input for the nervous system to actually lengthen up against and fire those axial extensor muscles to create a safe and stable spine, right? What we're talking about also are some other sensory inputs, right? So the input side of the world is definitely the place where everyone's leaving a lot of options that they aren't even thinking about because they're thinking about all these outputs in the front side and what we can see, right? But just because you can or can't see a deficit, right, doesn't mean that there's not the right neurologic input to create the right effect to create an output, right? Because someone may be doing fine, they have great posture, right? Everything seems good, but you put them in something like what you have, and that gives a different input to the nervous system that it actually orients against, and now you're stimulating the nervous system, which is kind of this background part, right? So people will go, well, their posture is great, and I put them in this thing, and now they're better. Well, that's because you gave a stimulation, an input that the brain actually really responded well to, and that's how you, when you assess and reassess, right, which is a big thing about how to know what the brain's doing, you assess something like you have them sprint, right? Put a suit on, have them sprint again, and it's better. Well, neurology explains why that's the case, so it's an awesome tool for that. And then, you know, if you go after other inputs like warm, cool, hot, cold, compression, because there's a whole insular cortex and vagus nerve that may be affected by having actually the pressure and that kind of, not just the warmth of it, but actually the compression around the body that makes a person actually feel connected interoceptively, which is a huge part of the nervous system. So now we're talking about another element of inputs that may be the reason. So you can't just tell one story about inputs with the nervous system, which is why if one thing works, you go, well, maybe it may be affecting three or four things. So let's maybe assess and test and see which one that is, right? But in the simplest version of things, if you give the nervous system an input and you give it a better result from it, you've actually done a really good thing for the brain because now you have a healthier brain that makes them safer to do the activities and less potential for injury that way, right?
Yeah, definitely. So who is your typical clientele right now, and what are you doing to activate their deep muscles right now without the suit?
Okay, so I mean, client can be anyone, anyone that, if I'm honest, anyone that has a brain, right? Because I'm looking at it through neurology, right? So a kid comes in, grandma comes in, elite athlete comes in. I'm still going to go after their nervous system to create the effect and the change I want, right? What we're doing now is, we'll give them a cue to stand long and tall, right, while they're doing things. So that's more of a conceptual first step, right, to see if they can just find some length, right, and be in neutral stance before they're moving around much, right? Then, we can take a band and put it over one side or put it over both sides, one side at a time, or sometimes we'll do different weights, like a greater pull on one side than the other. A way to do it just manually is to, do what I call anti-gravity, is a test, and I put hands on their shoulders and push down, have them lengthen at their ankles, lengthen at their knees, and I tell them, I go, just hallucinate a bit with me, right? Just try to do that and then follow it. And usually what happens is they'll go from being kind of wobbly and unstable to where I could actually feel like I could climb up on their shoulders. Because once you get oriented, stacked up bone on bone, right, more oriented against gravity, cleanly, the power potential that you have to then do anything else is phenomenal, right? So then you just want to translate that into motion, right? So if you have something like this, where now, because the bands are tricky, you put bands on like a bandolier, but you can't do as many movements, right? So that's a bit limited. So I can do the drill and then have them do their activity, do the drill, have them do their activity, but it's harder to put that into a much more dynamic activity, right? someone may not be able to walk the house vacuuming with the bands on, right? They may not be able to do. They can keep long and tall, but how can I give them even a more a greater or more direct input?
Sure. Plus, when they're with you, you're able to observe, you're able to watch, you're able to make sure they're doing the right thing. But what are you able to do right now when you send them home, and what are they doing when they're there?
Yeah, and that's where they'd have to work with a band on one side or the other. I mean, the things we know about other ways to stimulate the nervous system are to work with other inputs like the visual system to go after midbrain, which will help balance out neurologically the brain so it can do a better job of governing posture, both from a flexion and extension standpoint, right? But it's always awesome to find a tool that somebody can take home, which is why I was so attracted to what you guys were doing. I'm like, well, that's great, because you can be as clever as you want with neurology, but if compliance isn't there, for one, and the application isn't there for them to use it for what they care about, then those two things are empty, right? So if you can find compliance in giving them something that they can take home and feel confident that they're doing the right thing, and you've already assessed and reassessed to show that it's beneficial in the right direction, then you're golden. I mean, that's the best of everything, right? To have something that a tool that you can go, we tested it here, you're great, use this. Right, take it home and do, and then they can walk with it, right? They could, and that's the best thing, is if you can find a tool that can integrate into life with the least amount of habit change, you're going to get the highest amount of compliance, therefore the most time with that tool to then create the best neurologic effect, which then makes the brain healthier to make any other change you want to make.
Awesome. Great stuff. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate it.